So you've got a very interesting story, and you've got a new book coming out that I just ordered. I see that it's coming out in September, called Spiritual Graffiti, and its subtitle is Finding My True Path. It's got the same publisher as my wife, which is, they're just fabulous. And some of the story we'd like to hear from you. In fact, instead of me paraphrasing, why don't you give us the synapse of your story and your journey?
Well, it's kind of the archetypical sort of hero's journey of, going from, uh, comfort to discomfort, struggle, pain, getting lost, struggling with, growing up in the Bay Area and stumbling into drugs and gangs and violence and kind of I ended up, I got kicked out of three schools, arrested a bunch of times, just got into a lot of problems, a lot of trouble. I had friends growing up who were, one of my friends was on the FBI's most wanted list for being a huge drug distributor up here in the Bay Area, and just I got involved in a lot of just, a bad scene, so to speak. And there wasn't a very bright sort of horizon for me because I was failing my way through high school, and I ended up living at a group home for about 2.5 years here in Northern California. And that's when my life started to turn around because my parents were divorced when I was young. And, they put me in therapy at one point because I was suffering from depression. And they said, I might have ADD, and they want, the doctors recommend I take Ritalin and do all this kind of stuff. And I think what I was really struggling from was a spiritual crisis of not really having a purpose or having a path or a practice, something that could kind of direct all my creativity and passion towards something that was positive. And after leaving that group home, I started to get really heavily involved in hip hop when I was probably about 13 or 14, when I started becoming a graffiti artist and an MC. And when I left the group home, I discovered yoga thanks to my dad. And that's when my life really had a huge turnaround. And yoga really helped me to get my feet on the ground. It gave me traction. It pointed me in a direction. It helped me sort of reclaim my health, reconnected me to my body. It gave me a meditation practice. And I ended up studying with some incredible teachers, living with them, traveling throughout India, spending time with saints and mystics and enlightened people, reading great books, and then putting out this record in 2007 or 2008. And then that whole thing kind of snowballed and exploded, and we got all this great, huge traction on YouTube and iTunes, and social media was happening. And so all of a sudden I found myself on these stages, performing in front of 2, 5, 10,000, 20,000 people. And my book is a look back at that sort of curvy, windy road that led me to this place where I am now, where I've been practicing yoga for almost 20 years. And I think my wife, Amanda, who's also a graffiti artist, I think we've taught almost 500,000 people yoga now because we've traveled all around the world performing and teaching. And my book's sort of a reflection of all the craziness, all the mistakes, all the heartbreak, all the accidents, all the trauma, all the pain, all the suffering, and how all of that was a part of this journey and this process of discovering my life's purpose.
You talk a lot about Gandhi, and you've got a song and a great music video, "Be the Change." What is it you're linking to with Gandhi and trying to bring to us in the song, in your lyrics? You also have a line in there that I need to quote you because of this time we're in. You mentioned Trump and North Korea, and it says, "An eye for an eye makes the world blind."
Yeah, I spent some time short period of time at Gandhi's ashram in India. And there was a time in my life where I became extremely interested in, when I started practicing yoga, I started hearing about this word ahimsa. which means nonviolence. And when I started to study about ahimsa, I met this woman named Sharon Gannon, who founded Jiva Mukti Yoga in New York City with her partner David Life, and they became good friends of Amanda and I. And Sharon and David have dedicated their life to non-harming, and they're huge animal rights activists, and they're vegan, and they've really devoted themselves to like being a voice for all these animals who don't really have a voice. And when I started to study Gandhi and just all the sort of bizarre practices that, you know, he was doing, like his diet, natural healing, you know, getting back to the land, I kind of see Gandhi as like the original hipster in a way. Like he was doing all these things that are just kind of coming back into style now, like, you know, all the, you know, getting back to like the craftspeople, like making stuff yourself, you know. You know, you see all these really cool artists and artisans, like, you know, getting back to like making stuff locally and supporting the local, you know, the local economy and environment. And Gandhi was all about that way back when, you know, the British were sort of occupying India, and his whole thing was, you know, make your own clothes, you know, spin your own khadi cloth. And, you know, he marched to the beach in order to harvest salt because, you know, the British were taxing salt, and all these like really simple things that had profound implications. And what was so interesting when I was studying the life of Gandhi was that he said that he got all his ideas by tuning into the still quiet voice inside of himself, which, you know, is the voice of our conscience. Um, and the more I started to really look at that and connect to that and feel into that, that sort of became my compass as well for, you know, making music and art and being a teacher, was to really hone and develop my intuition and trust myself. And I think when you're an artist or a musician, you have to really learn how to trust your instincts, because everybody has ideas and opinions. And on some level, especially when you start to get into the industry of entertainment, you know, there's the preconceived notions of what's already worked in the past, and to replicate that. And sometimes that's valid, but sometimes that could be a huge distraction from you creating something that's really unique and original and authentic to yourself. And when you look throughout history at the people who really stood out, the people who really, you know, these iconic people, like I think of like, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi, and just incredible men and women who've really made a difference. It seemed like all of them had this one thing in common, where they all had a deep connection to their own intuition, and that ability to really listen to themselves and develop a conversation with themselves where they could, you know, tune in and figure out what their next move was going to be, you know, what their next solution was going to be. And doing things where a lot of people said they were crazy. You know, a lot of people are like, this, you know, this is not logical. It's not rational. Doesn't make sense. But because they listened to that still quiet voice within, they created a legacy. At the top of the show, you had mentioned that word legacy, which is, you know, such a powerful idea of like, how do you want people to remember you? What kind of echo do you want to leave on the earth once the body falls? And so, yeah, Gandhi became one of those people along the way that was an inspiration for me. And Gandhi wasn't perfect. I don't want to deify him or make him into like some kind of idol or anything, but he was definitely someone who paved that path following his own intuition. And he was able to do some amazing things with his lifetime. And a lot of them when he was very, very old. Like, you know, in the later part of his life is when he did some of the greatest, you know, revolutionary acts. So, you know, people like that really inspire me, because they remind me that one person can make a huge difference.
So MC Yogi, I didn't prepare you for this at all, but would you feel comfortable in rapping something or singing something? I'm putting you on the spot, but it might be a nice way to close out. No, and no pressure.
Yeah, no, I growing up, I used to, we used to battle and freestyle, and that was always a part of the culture. And, when I was probably about, 13 or 14, when I first started emceeing, we used to always get together and freestyle, in these ciphers or circles. And, all the kids that I was hanging out with were into like graffiti and breakdancing and just the whole hip hop culture. And, coming up with rhymes off the top of the head was always a part of it. So, I mean, I'm not really going to sing right now, but if you want, I could just I can open the,
Give us something off the top of the head, and
open the pipeline.
let's go for it.
Okay, well, what's the name of your show?
Regen 360.
So like regeneration?
Yes.
I think the key to regeneration is the cultivation of concentration through patience. You got to take your time to align your mind from the base of your spine in order to move through this matrix. Because let's face it, there's a lot of hatred. And in order to return to the sacred, you got to break it and reshape it. Because it's all just energy. Essentially, we have to reconnect all the vital, powerful energies that are stored in our memory. Because incredibly, we're built divine. It's our nature. In order to get to that innermost layer, the innermost chamber where the laser is the brightest, we have to use that science to realign us. So take your time, but keep going. Don't stop till that door opens. These words spoken, dipped in gold so they're golden. And I hope that you know that you are chosen to be the one to heroically save yourself from yourself so that you can rise up and shine like a million suns. And it's not done. Until then, keep banging that drum, breathing into your lungs, using your tongue as a weapon so that the words could be sung, spoken. And I'm hoping that everybody who's listening knows that you're blessed. So with that, I say peace, namaste. Until next time, respect.